Welcome back to On Texas Football's Tuesday Night Longhorn Livestream, brought to you by Andy Ludicky. I'm your host, Amanda Atwell, joined with CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe. Great show ahead. We got the college football playoff rankings that just dropped for week 2. Y'all make sure to pop any questions you have in the chat. We'll try to get to them. And super chats will jump to the top of our list. So let's just get right into it. Let's get into the college football playoff. Texas jumping a couple spots. So if the playoffs were today, Texas would be in the 12-team college football playoff. So I don't know what they say, stop the count here. That'd be lovely. But got some games on the schedule. So what do you guys think about this? Do you think this looks better than it did last week, in your opinion?
I think that committee got the top 10 completely right. You can probably go up to 11 and 12, and Oklahoma and BYU probably rounded out. I think there's very little argument for movement one way or the other, depending on where we are. Obviously, right now there's 3 big weeks still ahead. But if you're Texas, you got to feel good. The committee's giving you that second 2-loss selection spot right now, right behind Notre Dame, and it really just doesn't matter right now, considering who you have this weekend and who you have at the end of the week or end of the year. If you're Texas, you can certainly play your way in. You control your destiny. But right now, their committee, again, is giving you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to your resume and body of work so far.
So that was going to be my point. I thought about this. You guys tell me if I'm crazy or whatever. It's almost like the committee's just giving Texas a complete mulligan for the Ohio State loss. It's almost like right now, like it doesn't exist.
I mean, that's fair. I feel like that. I think going into the season, what I saw a lot of people say is win or lose this game, you kind of expected both teams to end up in the college football playoff, and that the game wasn't going to be exceptionally damaging to either team's record, depending obviously on if the rest of season goes to plan, which Texas's didn't go quite as to plan, and it wasn't a blowout loss or anything for Texas. So you can see where it makes sense that would be a bit of a mulligan loss on the schedule. So
it's almost like, again, this is just how I don't know if I'm rationalizing it or what, but it's almost like whatever negative comes from the Florida loss, it's almost like because you scheduled Ohio State and played there to open the year, it's almost like it mitigates any negativity from the Florida loss. It's just a loss. It's not an ugly loss or you lost to a bad team or whatever. I don't know. I not that I'm complaining, mind you, at all. It's just, I think when it boils down to it, and this is why I buy if Texas ends up 9-3, why I think they've got a great shot to get in. The committee does not want to send the message that you're going to be penalized for scheduling really tough non-conference games. I don't think they want to set that precedent.
I completely agree, because the entire argument is, well, if you're just Indiana, if you go the Indiana route, you scrap Virginia and you take on a Towson or whoever they ended up swapping that game for. Well, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Texas would be sitting here at 9-1, whatever it is, and be completely okay, right? 8-1. And that's fine and all, but it's not great for the sport of football. That was the most watched season opener game of all time, or rematch of the Cotton Bowl a year ago. It's good for the sport. It's good for competition. I would say Texas would be better off having given that experience in Columbus as well. So I do appreciate that the committee is valuing these big marquee games, because that's the one thing with the expanded playoff, with all of these, extra football games. The one thing that would really suck is it to take 2 months before you get a meaningful football game. And you're sitting around saying, well, we're 4-0, but it's been against UTSA, UTEP, and Incarnate Word, right? That's not fun for anybody. So I appreciate that from the committee.
Here's my thing with Notre Dame too. And I already see some stuff. People in the chat are not fired up about Notre Dame being ahead of Texas again. But like with Notre Dame, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You can say, okay, they scheduled Texas A&M, they scheduled Miami, they scheduled USC, which is a rivalry game, but they don't play in a conference. So to be in the mix, you have to schedule tough. So I guess Notre Dame's kind of where I draw the line at. Okay, you get credit for scheduling tough because Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference. They don't have to go through what Texas and Ole Miss and Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and Indiana are going through, having to go through really tough conference schedules.
Yeah, the Notre Dame conversation will always be interesting, right? Because on the year to year, depending on obviously who they play, it's going to be a really tough schedule, or it's going to look like it's been, a walk in the park this year. Obviously, you could make the argument it's been a walk in the park, but look, Notre Dame's taking care of business just as you would expect a playoff team to this point. And I want to make this very clear. I have no issue with Notre Dame being ahead of Texas in the current poll right there, 7-2, just as well as Texas. First two games of the year, they ended up losing by 1 and 3 points. On top of that, they're on a 7-game win streak. They've won every game by double digits. They've not played with their food like Texas has with some inferior competition. They don't have the wins that Texas has, but at the same time, they've looked significantly better in those 7 games. They have a margin of victory that's north of 26 points. They've beaten the hell out of teams. They just put Navy, they took them to the woodshed, a team that was 7-1 a week ago. They're rolling right now. I have no issue with Notre Dame being ahead of Texas right now, and I know some folks might not like it, but that's the fun of these committee playoff ranking releases is you get to sit here and converse about it and debate until the next slate of games on Saturday.
And Amanda, I don't want to spoil anything you and Billy have coming up this week, but that would be my argument, honestly, for Texas A&M to be at least at 2, and you can make an argument for number 1. Yes, their schedule is not as tough as we thought it would be at the start of the year, but similar to Texas last year, they have won their games the way they're supposed to win them to be in that position.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a lot in the show too. And honestly, Billy wasn't really begging for A&M to be higher than 3. I think he is also has a little bit of battered Aggie syndrome from those super high expectations and getting too high and then just being ultimately let down. But yeah, I think he is very aware of the fact that it has ended up where A&M, I think most of their SEC games are against the bottom half of the conference, with the exception of Kentucky. They don't play Kentucky. It's against the bottom half of the conference. They did go toe-to-toe there a little bit with Auburn, but what you have seen with them is some development since those early games where their run defense looked a little sketchy to where they're winning these games where the way they're supposed to win. And yes, LSU is not the LSU team of last year, but it's still not easy to go into Death Valley and put belt to ass, for lack of a better term, against LSU. That's not an easy accomplishment. So as much as I'm disappointed that my hate watches have been failed this year with A&M, you can't deny that it's the same argument I made last year with Texas. Yes, they got a good hand as far as schedules go, but if you do what you need to do, that's all that matters. And you're going to prove whether or not you deserve to be there once the college football playoff rolls around, regardless. Yep. You'll prove whether or not you belong. Texas did it last year, to be determined if A&M does the same this year.
Yeah, I was thinking, CJ, in regards to A&M and Texas and this whole deal, and we're getting a lot of questions about it in the chat. A 9-3 Texas with a win over Texas A&M, what does that do? Well, if you want to go head to – let's say Notre Dame loses to Pitt this weekend and you got 9-3 Notre Dame versus 9-3 Texas to get in, you have one common opponent at that point, and it's Texas A&M. And Notre Dame will have lost at home. And in that scenario, Texas will have beaten A&M at home. So is common opponent the trump card at that point? I don't know. My thing with Texas is this. Obviously, you've won yourself into a position now where if you keep winning, you're going to be fine. If this weekend doesn't go your way, then I think what it looks like and how far you fall next week, that's when things get really interesting. In terms of now we're looking at, okay, what would it take to get, realistically, can you come back from where you are to get back into the mix? So, but that's for next week. We'll talk about Georgia, but the A&M win could mean a lot, not just for Texas positioning, but if it comes down to an argument between Texas and Notre Dame, that is a trump card Texas would have.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun that's still to be had this year. And to the point that we made at the very beginning, if Texas wins 2 of the next 3, the committee again feels like they want to keep Texas around or in this conversation. And I saw that that question from Shivam earlier. I mean, look, what would it take for a 9-3 loss Texas team or a 9-3 team to get into the playoff for Texas? There'd have to be some extra movement elsewhere, right? You would have to make sure that the ACC didn't get 2 teams in, which I think we can all agree the committee is looking at the ACC saying, hey, go enjoy basketball season. On top of that, you don't want BYU and Texas Tech to get in from the Big 12. And it looks like they will be meeting once again in the Big 12 championship game. Given that Texas Tech won that meeting earlier, you want Texas Tech to now win that conference and defeat BYU, because we've seen how the committee values an extra loss to a Texas or Oklahoma versus that of BYU, who sits right behind the two of them. And then, of course, it'd be great if Notre Dame fell again, and it would have been huge. It would have been massive if Oregon had lost this past weekend. But can't go back in time. So, Texas, best thing for you is to go out, boost that resume, and take care of business on Saturday with the win over Georgia.
Whatever iteration of 9-3 you are, you're going to need help.
Yep.
Like that's just the bottom line. And it becomes a deal. Okay, if Texas wins this weekend, how far does Texas move up? Do you move it to? I would assume at that point, a win at Georgia, you would move a 2-loss Texas ahead of a 2-loss Notre Dame. Does then that if the committee's then in theory canceling out the Ohio State loss, would you move Texas ahead of Oregon? Would you move Texas ahead of Texas Tech at that point? So that's the positioning of Texas win or lose next week is going to be fascinating, because that'll tell you either what you've got to make up and the kind of help you need the rest of the way if you win your last two, or if you were to beat Georgia and then lose the A&M game, what kind of margin for error do you have?
Definitely. All right, we'll get to some of your questions. Make sure to get those in if you have any. Super chats, we'll jump to the top of our list, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's to come next week. But first, let me hear from our friends over at myperfectfranchise.net. Are you looking to diversify or new ways to make money? Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net can help you do just that by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and financial goals. Call him or email him to learn more. He's got a really cool process that identifies the perfect fit for you. Email him now at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. So moving on to Georgia, we got a little bit of an update from Sark yesterday in the press conference about some of the injuries that I'm sure plenty were concerned about, especially with how the defense looked in that fourth quarter against Vanderbilt. He expects Taft to be back, which I feel like is huge as far as just communication in the backfield goes and communication between those defenders. And then Jelani McDonald and Ryan Wingo as well, all practicing, all expected to be okay. How do you think this is critical with this kind of Georgia team that you're facing this week?
Well, it's going to be big with coverage of linebacker or of tight ends, the linebackers, the safeties that have to, take on that responsibility. Jeff, I'm sure you've heard Rod Babers throw out the stat that Texas has been targeted over the last 3 weeks, 31 times to linebackers or to tight ends. Goodness. And they've had success, right? Those tight ends have been able to get free and create some big plays over the middle of the field or out on the outside. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of Jelani McDonald when Georgia gets into those 12 and 13 personnel looks, feel like he is back on the field. That's going to be very big for Texas. On top of that, look, who knows how much Cade Phillips Texas sees on Saturday. It sounds like to Sark, they want to get him more into the rotation. But to do so, you got to make sure that your freshman on the road in a big environment like Georgia is up to speed when it comes to where he needs to be, who he is covering, what coverage Texas is in, and that all starts with Michael Taft.
Yeah, and speaking of Taft, and you mentioned the linebackers, I keep thinking about Anthony Hill, who, by the way, was the Chuck Bednarik Award, I think, today. He was named a semifinalist for. There's a lot you can take away from the two Georgia games last year. And as it relates to this game, I just go back to that game, and I think of Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, and Trevor Etienne, those three guys in particular. Those two games Georgia needed to win desperately. Those three guys, that was probably the two best games they played all year, were the two games against Texas. So for Texas to win this game, Anthony Hill's got to play. We've got to be saying on Saturday, that may be the best game Colin Simmons played all year. That may be the best game Anthony Hill's played all year. That's the best game I've seen Michael Taft play in a long time. If Texas is going to win this game, your big time players have to step up. Like this is what you did all the offseason work for, was to get to this point, and you need your big time players to come up in a big time game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Sark said specifically, I figured this would be asked, of just like, it seemed like Kirby had his number last year, and Texas coming into this probably with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, but he said specifically they're not treating it as a revenge game. I find that a little hard to believe. The players have short memories when it comes to who kept them from a potential SEC championship last year and who kind of embarrassed them on their home field. the only embarrassment they had on their home field last year. But how he said it's a different team this year. How is Georgia? We obviously we've learned how different of a team Texas is this year, but how is Georgia specifically different? I think specifically their defense is what I've noticed for the most part, and obviously a new quarterback. You have Gunnar Stockton, who Texas saw in the SEC championship, but bit of a different system they have.
Yeah, definitely. And Jeff, I'll be really short here. I'll only talk about a little bit of the Georgia offense here because it is a different team. It's almost completely flipped from around a top 35 to top 40 offensive unit to a top 35, top 40 defensive unit, whereas it's a top 5 unit on the other side. The one thing for me is, look, Georgia is very efficient with the football. They score 3.47 points per drive this year. That's number 6 in the country. When they have the football, they possess it very well. They're top 10 in time of possession. They want to be quick. They want to be effective. They want to get those tight ends over the top of you. It's a little different. But look, one thing for me is Zachariah Branch is basically an extension of that handoff, of that run game. He has more than 2 times as many targets as any other wide receiver on that unit. They want to get in 12 personnel and just wear you down. And, of course, Gunnar Stockton can beat you with his legs, or at least pick up the 5 to 6 yards that you need to stay in second and third and short. They do a great job of that. They're very efficient. And that's really where the change is, because the defense, and Jeff, here's the alley-oop for you. The defense just isn't as explosive as we've seen other Georgia defense has been.
Yeah, it's kind of like, Alabama's the exception because we never saw Alabama really go through it with Nick Saban. But, you go through every kind of dynasty we've seen in college football, and you reload to a certain point where it's like, man, at some point you lose guys like Mykel Williams and Jalen Walker, and you just cannot reload. There's nobody that good behind them. So I think from that standpoint, Georgia's having to reload a little bit. They don't, CJ Allen's the best player in their defensive front right now that's healthy and on the field. And as good as he is, he's not Jalen Walker. He's not that guy, or like a Mykel Williams. He's not that guy that can just completely wreck a game plan. Texas has 2 of those guys right now with Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons. So it is a different Georgia team. I think there's 2 things at play, and I'll get to something you mentioned here a second ago, Amanda, because I think it's relevant. But as far as Georgia goes, if I'm a Georgia fan going into this game, the reason why I should feel good is Georgia has won multiple styles of games this year. You go back to that Auburn game. Yes, the officiating did play a role in that. I think any rational Georgia fan would agree. But you won really ugly, nasty games. You look at Ole Miss and Tennessee. You've won a couple of games where your defense was garbage and you had to win shootouts. So Georgia's had to find different ways to win, and they've proven capable of winning different styles. For Texas, as far as the revenge factor goes, Sark mentioned this on Monday, and it's one of the most poignant things he said this season. This team really had to learn to get to a point where, the battle cry for the last 2 teams has been be enamored with us. And I think we might have heard this team say that, but I don't think they really knew what it meant. I think now they do, because before the season started, we heard a lot of talk, and not that they weren't focused on Ohio State. That would be completely disingenuous for me to suggest that, but there was a lot of talk about getting to the playoff, winning an SEC title, competing for a national title. And I think Sark admitted this week finally, he's like, hey, we were thinking too big picture at the start of the year. And now, and it's easy to do when you're in a do or die situation, you can't look beyond what's right in front of your face. And it just so happens this week, what's right in front of this team's face is Georgia. That's not going to determine whether Texas wins or loses the game, but I just think the revenge factor takes a back seat to, man, if you lose this game, your season might be over. There's no point in thinking about the next game, because if you lose this game, it is completely out of your hands at that point.
Yeah. One other interesting aspect here is the coaching philosophy, and kind of I don't want to say it's X's and O's, but what's Kirby really good at? He's a great motivator, right? Coming into Austin, Texas was the number 1 team in the country. It was very easy a year ago to say, hey, they're counting you out, right, guys? They're the favorite. They're the number 1 team in the country. It's up to you to go prove them wrong. In the SEC championship game, it was, hey, they're favored, or it's a pick 'em essentially in a neutral time. They don't think you can go beat them again, right?
Yeah.
What is that going to be like for Sark, who's now wearing those shoes on his feet? saying, hey, Texas, hey, guys in the locker room, you're touchdown underdog. You're going on the road to play within the hedges. Teams don't win here. But you could do something pretty special to keep your season alive. What's that motivation factor going to be like? That's going to be really interesting. And hopefully we get a peek behind the curtain at one point in the post-production, because I'd like to know it, right?
Yeah. It's funny what narratives form. And look, I'm guilty of piling onto some of those, fair or not. Especially with my comments about Texas A&M in the month of November until I'm proven wrong. That's I'm waiting. I'm waiting for them to slip on the banana
Waiting
peel.
for a Samford upset.
Exactly. I know Lucy's got that football and she's going to pull it out anytime Charlie Brown's running at it. But like if Texas loses a game on Saturday, the narrative will be, see, Sark can't beat Kirby. Well, how many people are beating Kirby Smart right now? This is like that whole Mac Brown, Bob Stoops thing. Oh, Mac Brown can't beat Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops owns him. Yeah, well, go back and look. How many people were beating Oklahoma at that time? Not very many. It's pretty freaking hard to do. So I kind of want that for Sark just to be able to shed that narrative, because I know if Texas loses a game, it's going to be Sark's record against top 10 teams and Sark's record against ranked opponents. And you'll see the graphic where Jimbo Fisher through X number of games did this and Sark through X number. Like, it's coming. Like, I've already got my head wrapped around. I got my mind right for it. So, Georgia's really tough to beat. I think what's the number I saw? And I think producer Matthew actually gave us this, CJ. I think Georgia under Kirby is 11-1 at home against ranked opponents. And the only loss was to Alabama earlier this year. So
that sounds correct.
Yeah. So like Georgia's really freaking tough to beat. They're really freaking tough to beat at home. I would just like Sark to get that narrative flipped.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we got a lot more coming. We'll talk a little bit more about the Georgia game after this. Once again, if you have any questions, make sure to get them in. Super chats will jump to the top of our list. But first, Jeff, can you tell us about our friends over at Duck Camp?
I sure can. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts to keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. And on Texas Football Family, use the promo code ONTexas25. That's ONTexas25 at checkout to get 25% off your order at duckcamp.com.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Now, what I found interesting about this game as well is this is the first game that Arch has come in to play Georgia as a starter, a team that very much recruited him until the end. One of the few that he was very much considering till the end. He commented on it a little bit in the press conference, and then just as Georgia as talented of a program that as they are and what he's expecting this weekend.
Yeah, they're a good team, well coached, they plow the ball, so it's gonna be a fun one.
What about playing in Athens? Ever been there? Ever been to a game there? Just about playing there?
Yeah, I went to a game there, I think my junior year of high school. I played South Carolina. Yeah, it's a big time atmosphere. I'm excited.
All right, everybody talking about this is just kind of just another game, another week. What did it take for y'all to kind of block out, what took place last season? And, is it true that y'all not looking at this like it's, just another team?
Yeah, we're just focused on today. Saturday will be here soon enough. Got to focus on today and then have a good practice tomorrow.
He's a man of few words in these press conferences.
Arch had zero time for our questions, and I'm all for it. I'm cool.
I mean, I can't blame him. But with him, I think one of the biggest questions for probably fans in general is really like the changes you saw against Vanderbilt, and just Arch seemed to get a lot more time, a lot less pressure, and just will this be consistent? And that's one of the main things that I think I have anxiety about is, are we going to get any consistency about what this offense is doing? And I think that will be a big test. And looking at the Georgia defense, I don't know if it's like a misconception. They don't have many sacks. They don't have the numbers of getting pressure on the quarterback a ton. Do you think that matchup is a good thing for considering the Arch and the O-line issues that they've had?
Only if Arch believes he's being protected. And what I mean by that is earlier in the year, I think Arch felt like pressure was coming far more than it was. And as a result, he sped up mechanics. Footwork was sloppy. Balls were going left, right, and center, or anywhere but the center, really. I say that because I think against Ohio State, he felt like he was going to get Georgia-level pressure. Because looking back, that was the last time that he had seen extended number of plays or snaps or time on the field was in that game in Austin, in which, well, Georgia just about bullied everybody up front, right? And, they had 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. Arch had a forced fumble in there. If Arch believes that he is getting pressure, it's going to be a long day, whether pressure is there or not. But if he feels like he can get from read 1 to read 2 to a check down, well, there you go. You can start to move the football on this Georgia defense because, to your point, Amanda, they rank in the 120s. A Georgia defense ranks in the 120s in sacks and tackles for loss this year. Not something I would have ever expected to see.
No. And, you brought it up, CJ, but going back to the game last year, one thing that I think will be different, and it was different in the SEC championship game, and I think it'll be different too on Saturday. Texas won't be shocked by Georgia's speed defensively and the athleticism like they were in the first game last year. They just had, last year, OU had a good defensive front last year. They played Michigan, who had the 2 tackles, but they hadn't seen it, especially at the second level, like they did last year, and the safeties Georgia had last year. Like, they just hadn't seen it like that. And to your point, CJ, I was thinking about this, you want a quarterback that can handle pressure, like everybody does, right? And Arch, honestly, this year has been one of the better quarterbacks in the country at how he's thrown against pressure. But, it's kind of like figuring out if you have a really good sudden change defense, that how they play after a turnover. You don't want to really find out how good of a sudden change defense you have, because that means your offense is turning the ball over enough.
Yeah.
You don't want to know how good your quarterback is handling pressure, because if he's facing a ton of it, yeah, it's great that he's able to throw, but chances are there's going to be times where he either can't see it, or it's moving too fast, or somebody really misses a protection, or protection's wrong, or whatever. So I like that Arch has handled it. But to your point, I think both you guys are right. If you kind of weave it together, I think the game is slowing down a little bit for Arch, and I think he is able to process it a little bit faster. But you'd like to be able to not test, hey, how fast can you process it? Like, how quick can you get the ball out? Like, no, let's make sure our quarterback is able to stand upright by the end of the game. And honestly, as much as I think the running game is going to matter in this game, and it will, maybe more than, other than the Oklahoma game, more than any other game Texas will play this year, the ability and pass protection of the 2 Texas backs. I don't know that Trey Weisner's gotten enough credit for how good he's been in pass protection this year.
Yeah.
We know CJ Baxter's a really good pass protector. So I think both those guys, what they do in pass protection, and honestly, CJ, if they continue to be as good in pass pro as they've been, you can continue to use 11 personnel, because instead of having that extra tight end in as a blocker, I think it helps you more. It adds a little more element of unpredictability in 11 personnel if you can keep the back end knowing they can pass protect.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the shift of just how they shifted the positions in the offensive line, of just having Connor Robinson at center and shifting out Cole Hudson, and just having that rearrangement of the O-line, and how that is beneficial for Arch moving forward, especially just having a couple weeks behind that line now?
Well, you got guys up front that can finally move, right? They're not tripping over feet or stumbling or causing other guys around them to start falling down on outside zone. So that's great. And, you can live with getting beat, right? Offensive linemen are going to get beat, but when your offensive line is falling like dominoes on simple concepts that you need to have even the most simple functional offensive line, well, you're going to have some issues. And I think what was mentioned earlier, I forget who mentioned it. I think it was Rod, Jeff. Maybe it was, I don't want to give credit away if it was you, but the idea of having 2 centers on your offensive line, I think that's pretty important, to be able to sit up there and have 2 different eyes diagnose what's ahead of them, to point out potential blitzers, or to point out where guys need to be on certain landmark runs. I think that's important. And we heard Cole Hudson say after the Vanderbilt game, there's times where I thought this was a guy, speaking of Connor Robertson, who was smarter and knew more than I was when I was playing center. So there's your football IQ up front that's taken a jump that I just quite frankly don't think it was ever very high before.
Yeah, the thing Texas has to handle in this game up front is the simulated pressures by Georgia. Well, they'll mug their linebackers. They'll walk up and show like a 7-8 man pressure and then drop out of it at the last minute. But then they'll bring the corner or they'll bring a safety. They'll bring somebody off the slot, whatever it is. That's the kind of stuff where Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, when they really get in their bag, that's where they can mess with you. And that's where they messed with Texas a lot last year. Like if we talk about the double A gap blitzes, and like, yes, they will do that. But I mean, one of the biggest plays in the game in the regular season game last year was Dalen Everett came, like Quinn never saw him. Like nobody laid a hand on him on that blindside corner blitz. And that ended up being a turnover. So like, that's the kind of stuff you've got to watch with Georgia. And yes, I think it does make a difference when you've got guys that can communicate. So whether it's sliding protection, whatever, just IDing guys, it's going to have to be more on point than it's been at any point this year. It was really good that you faced a defense like Vanderbilt that does show they do pressure, they do blitz, like Clark Lee's defense, they are aggressive. It was a really good test run for what you're going to need to do this week, not just because of the upgrade in athleticism and talent with Georgia, but also now you've got to go do it on the road. And communication is going to be infinitely tougher than it was 2 weeks ago.
Good point.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we'll get to some more of your questions. Make sure to get those in and super chats. Jump to the top for us. But first, we're going to hear from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, we got a super chat from Juan Garza. Did Texas recruit Nate Frazier from Georgia? Do you guys remember?
I think they extended an offer, but I don't remember. I don't think so. I don't remember specifically hearing a lot about Nate Frazier at the time.
No, I don't either.
See if I can look it up. I'm not sure either. Thanks for the question, Juan. Guess we can't be too much of help.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have more of an in-depth answer for you, but no, I don't think he was ever really in consideration for Texas.
We got another super chat here, non-Texas, but what did you guys think of Pitt's head coach Monday saying the Notre Dame game is a must-win? If Sark said that, I'd be irate. I mean, I feel like a lot of games at this point in the season are kind of a must-win if you're in the position where you're ranked towards the bottom of the top 25 and you have a desire to go further in the season.
He went a really abstract way of saying who cares about this game. Saying, hey, we lose by 100, who cares? Hey, man, I'm sure all the Pitt faithful care, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, Jeff.
Pat Narduzzi's an interesting guy. And for his quirkiness, Pitt is probably the ideal place where he can just kind of be there and coach ball and be quirky, and nobody's really going to care. If he was to like, think about it, like if it's one thing, like if Charlie Strong was the head coach at Louisville and would have said his first year, hey, we're not winning the national championship this year. That's one thing. But obviously when he said it as the head coach at Texas, like rightfully the fan base flipped out because your fans don't want to hear that. They don't want like what baseball, if you're a fan of a baseball team, who wants to hear the manager saying spring training, like, yeah, it's gonna be the drizzling, you know what's this year. It's gonna be terrible. No, you don't want to hear that. So Pitt's kind of the perfect place for Pat Narduzzi. Great coach, but just
Do you feel like this is a must-win for this team when it comes to something?
Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I gladly get beat 103 or 110 to 10 in that game. They can put 100 up on us as long as we win the next two after that. But again, our focus is on Notre Dame and getting as many wins as we can.
It's
very strange sarcasm, I feel like. Just
CJ, you still haven't seen The Big Lebowski, have you? Is that on?
I've seen The Big Lebowski.
Okay, you've seen it. Yeah, it's the no, Walter, you're not wrong. You're just an a-hole. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Pat Narduzzi, you're not wrong, but that's not the message you probably want to send to your fan base.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean,
Like, I see where he's coming from. Like, hey, if you that game is not going to determine whether or not Pitt gets into the ACC championship game. And if you win the ACC, you get the auto bid, so you're in. But you don't need to. You can finesse that a little bit.
You can think that. You can say in your coaches' meetings. You don't want to say that in front of reporters whose job is to blast it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Interesting way to go about it.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
if you're sorry, Amanda, if you're a Pitt recruit, like, not that Pitt's a recruiting powerhouse, but like, I don't know, it's just not. You can finesse that a little bit, not the message you want to send.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes on at the end to say, I mean, we're looking to get as many of those wins as we can. So do you care if you win this game, or do you care? It's just, I don't know. Confusing commentary.
Like I said, like that's why for a guy like Pat Narduzzi, who's said some, hey, it's not like off the wall stuff, but just like, man, some of the stuff he says, if he was a head coach, like if he was a head coach at Penn State and said something like that, like, that fan base would have for sale signs in his yard the next morning. Like, so Pitt's the kind of place where you can get away with saying stuff like that. Because it's like, oh yeah, what are the Steelers doing this weekend? What are the Pirates going to do in free agency? Like, you don't care.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we'll get to a couple more of your questions right after we hear from our friend Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders, serving the Austin and Round Rock area and all of Texas, is the only insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin, Round Rock area and all of Texas, give him a call at 512-218-8571. So if y'all got any more questions, make sure you get them in. We got one here from Rod Baber's Helmet. Weird question. I love that name. Weird question, but did the Ohio State loss help the Florida loss?
Not a weird question, because that's kind of the scenario that in a different way. I said earlier, it's almost like whatever baggage you've got from the Florida loss, the committee's looking at that Ohio State game, just the fact that you schedule it, they're going to take some bricks out of your backpack for you. Like, yeah, we'll go easy on you for the Florida loss just because you went and scheduled Ohio State. I don't know that it helps, but you're definitely getting credit for scheduling Ohio State at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Texas's only loss was to Ohio or was to Florida, and you played another cupcake, you played a UTSA in non-conference, would the ranking be the same at this point? I mean,
honestly, probably not.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of punishment there, but at the same, they might look at it more as like a Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois last year. Of maybe it was just an early season blip on the schedule, but it's harder to overlook when you have those two losses next to your name, I feel like, than it is if it's just one.
I think with Texas, with if it's not Ohio State, like if they had scheduled, TCU or Baylor, or just run of the mill, insert Big 12 school here, and won that game by 3 touchdowns, the game control discussion, I think, by the committee would become a much bigger factor. Yeah, you beat Mississippi State, but you had to come from 17 down in the fourth quarter to do it. Yes, you beat Kentucky, but you did it in overtime and nearly lost it in regulation because of your end of game management. Yes, you beat Vanderbilt, but there had to be an onside kick going. Like, so I think the game control discussion would be much more of a factor than it is.
Completely agree. And that's why I think the more that you get into the weeds of two lost teams, you're going to start looking more and more into the overall seeding of, well, you beat some good teams, but you also played some really bad teams pretty poorly. And if Texas were to fall to 9-3 at any point this season, that becomes a big conversation point with teams with 2 losses, teams that are right on the fringe. Fortunately, to get to 9-3, you're going to have 3 top 10 wins under your belt. So that's your ultimate trump card. But that conversation will get louder and louder.
I think, too, Florida did fire their coach, and that team's not going anywhere. You did lose that game by 8 points, and you did have the ball at the end of regulation, in theory, with a chance to send it to overtime. If you look at last year, the first year of the playoff, Alabama went to Norman and got smoked
Yep.
by Oklahoma. That game wasn't even close. That was a bad Oklahoma team. They beat you like you stole something. Ole Miss lost at home to a really bad Kentucky team. So I don't think the Texas loss at Florida to me is not as bad as those two losses I just mentioned.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of amnesia among some SEC fan bases when it comes to remembering that those kinds of, especially the SEC fan base, Alabama, that was begging to be put into the playoffs last year after getting destroyed by that. I mean, it'd be one thing if Texas was absolutely destroyed by Florida. It did not look good for the first half, but when you make it a competitive game, at the very least on the scoreboard at the end of the game, where you're putting together something to where you could either tie it or win it, it's a little bit different of a story, especially considering it's on the road.
And I'll say it, CJ, so you don't have to. You point out rightfully so. Lane Kiffin's got that one game every year. It's like, dude, how the hell did you lose that?
Yeah.
I will say, the Egg Bowl is in Starkville this year.
Oh boy,
I'm just saying.
I like where your head's going, because that's that would be very Lane Kiffin-like to lose and mess up some playoff seedings there.
Yeah, and look, I think because last year was a kind of a test case for it. Like, is it better to just maybe avoid the conference championship game if you can and still get into the playoff? Like Ohio State got that extra time off. You saw what it did to Georgia and Texas, how much they had to expend. And, Texas, I'm not going to say because Texas didn't have quite enough in the tank at the end of the Ohio State game, that's why they lost, but it didn't help. It didn't help that you had to play an extra game against Clemson and you had to play Georgia in the count. You had to play Georgia twice. Man, if you're Ole Miss, honestly, because a 10-2 Ole Miss is in, if you lose the Egg Bowl and don't go to Atlanta, it's probably not the end of the world.
The risk you run there is losing home field, obviously, right? Yeah. And look, I don't know how much people are going to look at, tech environments versus that of Ole Miss or going to Eugene. Obviously, all these places are going to be pretty lively. It's a playoff game. But is that something that you're going to be ill-equipped to play in if you're Ole Miss? I would think not. But you risk that loss of home field, and hey, but at least you're rested, right? There's two sides to every coin, and in playoff argument, there's about 110 side coins here.
Yeah, James Richards mentions it from a Georgia perspective. Says, "I hope we don't make the SEC championship game as long as we're in the playoff." Yeah,
no need for it.
Plus, look, Kirby's got plenty of SEC championship rings in the trophy case anyway. I don't mean I don't want to belittle winning a conference championship. You want to be able to put a number on the wall, you do. But if your goal is to win the national championship, hell, if you're Georgia, do you want to play Alabama twice or vice versa? If you're Alabama, why you got to beat Georgia twice? Yeah. That's that. If you're Ole Miss, you got to play Georgia again, or Georgia, you got to play Ole Miss. Whatever configuration it ends up being.
Well, look a year ago, Jeff. Does Texas perform better against Ohio State if Cam Williams doesn't get dinged up against Georgia, right? It's those little games, or you get that bye and, you got one fewer game to play and you lose Cam Williams against Clemson. And it's too many. If you can, and this is always the fun conversation, right? You hear a lot about it in baseball, rest versus rust. Teams that get into the playoff immediately and they kind of take the foot off the pedal, they kind of skate in, and then after a week or two, they're back to playing, versus the team that's had to grind and sweat out every single rep or play to get to where they are. And it's in a game like football, if you could have a week off, I think you take that 10 times out of 10, because on any given play, you could lose your best player.
Yeah, especially it would be different. And look, yes, this is me. I'm going to put my SEC cap on, be SEC homer. But if we're talking about, I'll say the same thing about the Big Ten. Those two conferences in particular, when you play that conference schedule, it ain't about, I don't care, you don't want your bye week to stop momentum. No, you need a freaking week off. You need to be able to rest a little bit, because man, it's not easy to go through those two leagues all year and expect to just be healthy when you get to playoff time. Like that's not how it works. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I hate that we're having to say that about a conference championship, but I mean, there is merit to it, and the fact that there is a merit to it tells you something's got to give here sooner or later.
I mean, last point, Ohio State, no conference championship game, came into the playoff and was far and away the best team in the country. And if you don't need to play in the conference championship game to get in the playoff, there's no need for it.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. All right, we'll get to a couple more of your questions after we hear from our friends over at Culligan's. You know, when it comes to the water your family drinks and uses every day, you don't want to cut corners. That's why for over 90 years, people have trusted Culligan. And here in Austin, Culligan Ultra Pure has been serving the community for more than 60 years. Culligan Ultra Pure provides high-quality residential water treatment at an affordable price, including reverse osmosis systems, water softeners, and UV purification lights. Whether your water comes from a well or a municipal source, Culligan has a perfect treatment solution for your home. And right now, you can schedule a free water test and save up to $600 when you mention On Texas Football. Culligan Ultra Pure proudly serves Austin, Corpus Christi, Victoria, Brownwood, Pampa, and Plainview. So don't wait. Call Culligan Ultra Pure today at 512-339-2378 to schedule your free water analysis. That's 512-339-2378, and make sure to ask for Michael. Better water starts with Culligan. All right, we got time for a couple more questions from you guys. We got one from All Right Cubed. How long do the conference title games last? We were kind of just discussing this. It feels like their days are numbered. I mean, the college football playoff expands much more. It's just a lot of wear and tear when you're playing that conference championship, going into the playoffs and playing multiple rounds of games. It's already a very physical game as it is. It's a lot of wear and tear on teams. I don't know how long they're going to last. I don't see them going away in the near future, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
Here's my thing on it, and I think I'll give Joel Klatt credit because I heard Joel Klatt talk about this a week ago, and it's honestly something that I didn't think about, but it's 100% right. If the reality of the transfer portal window is going to be what it is, where it's early January and you've got that window, I think coaches would probably like to have the season end closer to that portal window so you don't have all that time in between. And to do that, you've got to eliminate some weeks on the schedule. The only thing realistically you can take out is the conference championship game. And I think especially now that the SEC going to 9 games, where everybody's playing a 9-game conference schedule, everybody's on equal footing, I don't know that you need the conference championship game. And I think, CJ, that the networks will make the conferences whole to where whatever money in theory you would lose by not having a conference championship game, it's basically going to be a wash at that point with the new contracts.
Well, I'm just thinking if you lose a conference championship game in one of these power conferences, what realistic chance do you have on continuing your run of making or winning the college football playoff? Right? I mean, Imagine if Texas, they kind of had to do it last year, right? You started with Michigan, you play your 8 conference games. Imagine if you also had Michigan and you had to play another conference game to play 9, and then you lose in the conference championship game, and you have to go play the Big 12 champions. You got to go play the ACC champions, and here's Ohio State, and you got to play one more additional game after that. I mean, you could tell Texas ran out of juice.
Yeah.
Right? It's just so difficult to do when you are limited to 85 scholarship roster spots and guys, for the most part. I know to your redshirt conversation, these playoff games don't count, but at what point do you sit there and say, I'm relying on this freshman who's seen 27 snaps all season at the biggest point of my season to date? It's not viable.
And you can't, it's talking at both sides of your mouth because you can't have the player safety discussion and player well-being discussion while still playing X number of games. And like you said, CJ, at that point, you're probably going to have to be playing guys that you either don't want to play or probably shouldn't be playing at that point. So I know, we'll see going to 105 how it all works out. But yeah, I mean, I just, they're going to be a casualty. They're going to go away. And I am going to miss them, but in the grand scheme of things, like with the extra conference game and the money from the new TV contracts, as long as the conferences are made whole as much as they feel like they can be, they'll have no problem getting rid of the championship games.
Yeah. Don't know the timeline on that exactly, but I agree. I think they likely will be a thing of the past, especially if they expand the college football playoff again. We got a question here from Evil. What play top non-conference games? Why play top? No, sorry, I can't read apparently. When an SEC schedule is more than enough, not like the Big 12 schedules, you're going to face top programs in the college football playoff. I got to say, I was thinking about this in regards to Texas Tech this weekend. It's just as far as if you look at Texas Tech's non-conference game and then you look at their in-conference game as well, it's your two best wins over teams in the state of Utah. It's interesting to me because you got Texas, teams like Texas A&M, Notre Dame. I mean, scheduling these games, or not Notre Dame, they're not in a conference, but teams like Texas, A&M, scheduling these teams out of conference, the Notre Dames, the Michigans, the Ohio States, whereas you have a Big 12 team not scheduling those games. And I mean, they could still potentially get two Big 12 teams in the playoff. Where is the benefit for scheduling that game? I personally would want to schedule the better out of conference game because I think it's good for the sport. But it is interesting to me that it's the question here of just why play those games.
Yeah, my thing with that is I think you're playing them because I think especially for the SEC, by still having your conference members schedule one power conference opponent or Notre Dame in non-conference and then playing non-conference games, you're doing it to send the message to the committee. If it's between a one-loss Big 12 or ACC team or a two-loss SEC team, there's no question the two-loss SEC team is going to have enough positive data points that they should get in, regardless of what your playoff configuration is, 12, 16, whatever. So
when you come from an ACC or a Big 12 and you're trying to see is having to do now, it's more likely that you have to punch upward with a non-conference game that you'd like to schedule in the preseason where, if you're right now a team in the SEC trying to schedule future non-conference games, what good does it do to point on equal surface or equal footing or even punching up if you got 9 SEC games ahead of you, right? You're going to want that non-conference game to be one that you don't need to go down to the wire with or even risk a loss. So that's the difference for me is those conferences I think need to punch up and go schedule an SEC or Big 10 team. Whereas if you're in Texas right now, what good does it do for you to ever schedule a Big 12 team ever again? You don't win or gain anything. That's the challenge though, CJ. If you're Michigan, okay, what do you gain by scheduling Texas Tech? If you're LSU, what do you gain by scheduling Texas Tech? It's almost like, and we'll just use Tech as the example, right? It's almost like you're almost becoming Gonzaga in college basketball, where we might meet you somewhere on a neutral field, but there's no way in hell we're going to your place. No,
we're not going to do a home and home. We'll do home neutral, whatever. But yeah, it's going to have to be kind of one of those deals. I think. I don't think you'll see, and it could be kind of for Tech. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the long run. Man, it could just be a series of neutral site one-offs.
It is interesting. I mean, Texas was scheduling Alabama and Notre Dame when they were in the Big 12, but you didn't really see that from a lot of other Big 12 schools. And I guess it's a branding difference. And I mean, Texas wasn't exactly great for a majority of the time they were in the Big 12 the last 15 years. So their ability to schedule those and other Big 12 teams, I mean, Tech wants to be the big dog in the Big 12 now. I feel like you have to find a way to schedule some of those eventually.
Yeah, I think to your point though, Amanda, the difference was if it's Texas or Oklahoma specifically, like if you're look at the non-conference games Texas played, like if you're Notre Dame or USC or LSU, you can sell your fan base on playing Texas. You could sell your fan base on playing Oklahoma. That's a really tough sell to say, yeah, let's play Texas Tech. Let's do Tech in a home and home. Let's do TCU in a home and home. Like it doesn't. Yeah, it's honestly, it's almost like how for years, that's funny because they're in the league now. I used to look at scheduling BYU that way. Like I would not schedule BYU for anything. You have nothing to gain.
Is he frozen?
Oh, we lose Jeff?
I don't
Let me finish this thought, though. You have nothing to gain from playing BYU in a game in which you're not forced to play them.
Yep.
In Jeff quote.
Yes. Thank you for finishing that thought. We'll go ahead and hear from Andy Ludicky while we wait to see if we get a non-frozen Jeff back here shortly. Stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks of PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? Call Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. He will take you through a process to identify a business that will not only fit your financial goals, but also your skill set. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Is he back? Do we got him back? There he is.
StreamYard just decided to do an update, I guess, while we're doing a live show. So, yeah, there's that.
Very convenient timing for you.
Yeah, something's going on I haven't seen before. So, but
All right. There you go. Yeah, they couldn't. StreamYard couldn't handle the heat of what you were cooking. So
it was honestly, it was that BYU money trying to shut me up from making
Yeah.
a point against their favorite institution. So
the Mormons are in the chat. All right, we got a super chat from Texas football. Hooray-o. Can Texas coordinate with one of its satellite campuses like UTSA to be a minor league team that recruits not ready can play for, pull from same NIL, and move up midseason, joint practices, etc.? Is that like the CAP program for football?
Yeah.
Just minor league baseball in college football?
I would say that I hate to say something would never happen, but I feel pretty comfortable saying something like
I love that idea.
I don't hate it.
It'll never happen, but I love the idea of just being like, oh, Jelani McDonald and Michael Taff are hurt this weekend. Xavier Filsaime just got dinged up. Who the Roadrunners got, man in the field at safety right now? Call them up.
I mean, got a nice farm system like you do in the major. I mean, if people don't want college football to turn into professional sports, I feel like this would be a bad idea. But I mean, don't hate it. All right, we got a question from Cisco. Do you think you see more blitz on Saturday?
Probably not.
I don't think so. Not from what you've seen from Georgia's defense thus far.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about Texas, like PK's just he hadn't been a big blitz guy. I don't think he ever will be. And I mean, if Carson Beck was still quarterback in Georgia, yeah, maybe, but I don't think you do that because Gunnar Stockton can beat you running the football. So
yeah.
All right, we got another. Abel said you're cooking. You're cooking tonight, Jeff.
I do what I can.
We love it. All right, we got a question. This is interesting, Brandon. Hope we play our aim game Saturday. What do you think of OU at Bama? Seems like the media loves OU, and the matchup spread is down to 5. My take on this that I said in Moving Goalposts yesterday was I said it about Vanderbilt earlier this year with Alabama. I don't think Alabama loses to a team like Vanderbilt 2 years in a row. They didn't. I don't think Alabama loses to OU 2 years in a row. It's at home this year. I still don't really believe in OU quite yet again. I just don't. I'm hard-pressed to believe in them again other than their defense. And I think this Alabama team has to have a short memory.
This is going to be a really interesting game because neither team can run the football, and both teams defensively are really, really solid. And it's all about which offensive line will allow for plays to be made off schedule. Because, look, Oklahoma's got some speed at wide receiver. We've talked about it. You know what Alabama has, and if pressure can get there from Oklahoma, there's your chance. On the flip side, if pressure from Alabama can get home on Oklahoma, where do they then go to create offense? I think this is going to be an awesome game. And I think this is a game where, to your point, Amanda, there's no shot Alabama comes out flat in this game, knowing where they stand in the playoff picture, knowing how much of a threat Oklahoma is on that cusp looking in. But also, look, we heard Texas players say that revenge wasn't a big part for them. You lose to a team 2 years in a row, you're going to be upset.
And and you lose in the fashion that Alabama did last year to OU. They were embarrassed by Vanderbilt. They were embarrassed by OU. And I think you have to have a short memory about those kinds of games.
I agree.
Speaking of OU skill, guys, like is Jaden Ott the most like just disappointing portal pickup anybody had this year?
Yeah,
I haven't heard his name in like 4 weeks.
I honestly had to double check just now to make sure he was still on the roster. Like
How much money do they pay for him?
Too much probably. For a
Yeah.
team that doesn't like shelling out a lot of money, that's a big whiff. And when you don't have a lot of money to shell out, it's amazing that they're in a position that they're in right now, given that much of their free agent pie went to someone who's not a total non-contributor.
Yeah, I can't imagine how awkward that has to be as well. Imagine just knowing you're making more money than probably half the roster, yet you're not contributing like half the roster is. It's just a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. That's about all we have time for today. Y'all make sure to tune in to Coffee and Football tomorrow morning. For On Texas Football's Tuesday night Longhorn live stream. I'm Amanda Atwell. That's CJ Vogel, and that's Jeff Howell. Thanks so much for joining us. Y'all have a great night, and hook 'em horns.